Welcome back, students. Today we're going to be talking about internal rate of return, IRR, and NPV. Now, in my last NPV video, those questions weren't really realistic. The questions in this video will be a little bit more of what you should expect to see on an exam when we talk about NPV. Okay? All right, let's get started here. As always, leave me your questions. If you have a time value of money question, leave it in the comment and I will make a video solving it. Also, don't forget you can download this file and follow along. So, quick overview. We're going to become familiar with internal rate of return today, obviously, and we're going to understand what does it mean and how do we interpret it, okay? Now, let me introduce you to the BA2 Plus internal rate of return keys. As you remember last time, we went over the cash flow key and the NPV key, and the internal rate of return is what I'm introducing today. Now, you can go directly from the cash flow key to the internal rate of return key. You do not need to put anything in the NPV key, okay? So I just want to state that, but we're going to be doing NPV problems here as well. One can build on top of another. The other thing I want to mention is we left out before, CF0 is our initial investment. C01 is the year one cash flow, and F01 is the year one frequency. Now, we didn't do a lot with that. We may or may not do that here. But if you follow the steps I'm giving you today, you don't have to worry about that. Now, in the NPV key, the I was the discount rate we were using, and the NPV was purely there for us to compute. The internal rate of return key is very similar to the NPV, where we only compute the IRR once we have our cash flows keyed in. Let me just give you a quick review here. So when we have cash flow, as I cycle through here, here's our initial investment, cash flow 1, and then NPV, we have our discount rate. And notice, one thing I want you to notice is look up here. When I switch from the discount rate to NPV, it says compute here. You cannot enter the NPV. The NPV can only be computed through this button here, okay? Internal rate of return, same. It's only a place for you to compute once you've entered. There was nothing in the cash flow key, so it gave me an error, right? Once you've entered all your values into the cash flow key, then you can hit the internal rate of return button. Okay, all right, let's keep going. So, really quick crash course. I don't like to lecture, even though I really always do in these videos, but really quick crash course of what is internal rate of return. Let's build our timeline really quick. NIPV future value. So let's build a timeline for 3 years. Present value, which we're going to call an initial investment of 10,000. Future value of 0. We're going to be looking for the interest rate. And so we have 3 years. Year 1, year 2, year 3. And let's say we have $3,000 payment in the first year, a $4,000 payment, and a $5,000 payment in the third year. So if I asked you to solve for the interest rate here, or the discount rate, right, or the rate of return, I guess it's more rate of return because we are talking about a specific investment. So that's the right terminology. What you would do normally is you would use your time value of money keys, right? However, remember that the payment key, the payments must be consistent, right? You could have 3,000, 3,000, 3,000, but you can't have, like in this case, 3,000, 4,000, 5,000. There is no way to use your time value of money keys to solve for what this is called is an uneven set of cash flows. So this is why we need the internal rate of return. So let's put in our cash flows here. So we have 10,000. That's a negative because it's our investment. And then cash flow 1 is 3,000, positive. We're going to skip the frequency, leave it as 1. Cash flow 2 is 4,000. And then cash flow 3 is 5,000. Okay, so let's just go cycle through and make sure we get everything right. 10,000, 3,000, 4,000, 5,000. Great. Now we're going to skip NPV because we're just talking about IRR. Now remember, when I when we select IRR, it's just compute. So we're going to go up here to compute, and our return is going to be 8.8963%. I'm just going to round it to 8.90. So this would be 8.90%. This is our internal rate of return. It's what if we just break down the words, it's the internal rate of return. Here we have our investment, and here we have the cash flows for this investment. So the internal rate of return of this investment is the 8.90. Okay, I hope that made sense. So that was sort of what I would call part A. Part B of what is internal rate of return. The internal rate of return is the discount rate. Let's call this the discount rate for a second. The discount rate that makes it so, let me just move some things around here, makes it so that these cash flows discounted, let's use all of the 8.8963. 8.8963. I don't want to round. 8.8963. Okay, makes it so that when you add the initial investment plus each of these cash flows, 1, 2, 3, discounted at this rate, when we add them together, we get 0. I'll prove that to you. We'll do it really quickly. We'll do it with year 1, year 2, and year 3, and then we'll add it to our $10,000, and you'll see we'll get 0 back. So really quickly, I'm going to put this 8.8963 as my discount rate right off the bat. Okay, so let me see if I can do that. If I can exit, yeah, and then I'm going to put it here. Okay, now for example, this $3,000. It's discounted one time, right? It's one time out into the future. So 1. The present value is what I'm looking for. There are no payments. Here is my 3,000. I'm going to put that as future value, and I'm going to compute the present value. So 2,754.91 cents. 2,754.91 cents. Is that right? 2,754.91 cents. I'm also going to store it under number 1. Okay. Watch, if I go to recall 1, that's where it'll be. Okay. Now I'm going to discount this $4,000 by 2 years. Everything else remains the same, and I'm going to compute that present value. So 3,373.13 cents. Okay, I'm also going to store that under my second year. And then now I'm going to go the $5,000, and I'm going to discount that 3 years, and I'm going to compute the present value. So 3,871.95 cents. Okay. All right, so let's store that under number 3. Okay, so now I know these are negatives, and I'm not putting them here as negatives. This is where sort of our logic starts to break down a little bit. The other time value of money stuff, of course, it doesn't make sense that these are negatives, right? Because we have a positive $3,000 here. When we bring it back, when we bring this $3,000 into the present value, then we don't have a negative $2,700 in our hands. We have a positive, right? So we need to balance that out with our initial investment. Okay, so let's add up the 3 stored numbers. So, nope, that's not what I want. Recall number 1 plus recall number 2 plus recall number 3. This should add up to $10,000. Look at that, $10,000. So just to say that one more time, this internal rate of return is the rate that forces each of these cash flows, the present value of each of those cash flows to match the initial investment. Okay, let that sink in. I know it's complicated. All right, we're going to get started with the practice problems. Let's do this a little bit differently, because if I read you all these problems, it's going to take a really long time. You can pause the video, or you can just follow along with what I'm doing. I'm just going to pull out the variables that I know are important to the question. So I know I have an initial cost of $8,000. I know that these are my cash flows. And I also know that the discount rate for evaluating this investment is 5.64%. And the question is, calculate the net present value of this investment opportunity as well as the internal rate of return. So I'm going to put in my initial investment, which is $8,000. The initial investment is always negative, okay? It's an investment. It's money leaving you, right? It's negative. And then the cash flows that I have here, those are going to be positive. So I'm going to have 2,000, 3,000, 2,500, 1,500, and 2,500. And the discount rate is going to be 5.64%. All the frequencies, they're all just going to be 1. Okay, we're not really making any adjustments to the frequency, because there is no frequency. Frequency means that the number shows up more than once consecutively. All right, so we're going to be looking for NPV and internal rate of return. Let's grab our financial calculator here. Let's clear out any old information. So second clear time value of money, which we're not using, but second clear work. All right, and then because the cash flow, I think you need to click cash flow and then do second clear work. Okay, so CF0, which we have here, is the $8,000. That is a negative, and then enter. And then we have 2,000. I'm going to skip the frequency. Then we have 3,000 for year 2. Year 3 is 2,500. Year 4 is 1,500. And year 5 is 2,500. Okay, and again, I'm just going to cycle through it to make sure I got everything right. 8,000, oops, 2,000, 3,000, 2,500, 1,500, and 2,500 again. Now, I'm going to go to NPV. I'm going to put in, right, the discount rate, so 5.64. And then I'm going to hit enter. Really important you hit enter. And then we're going to go down to NPV. And all we can do in NPV is compute. So we're going to hit compute, and we're going to get a net present value of $1,806.63. 1,806.60. Oh no, I put that in the wrong place. 806.63 cents. That's our net present value. Okay. Did I get that right? Yep. Okay. Now we're going to go to our internal rate of return. There's nothing you can do here except hit compute. And we have an internal rate of return of 13.67. Okay. 13.67%. That's the internal rate of return of this project. And we have a positive NPV of $1,806.63. Straightforward enough. Okay, I hope you were able to follow along with that. Let's go on to the next problem. Again, you can pause it here, or you can just see me take out the sort of important pieces. I'm very familiar with this, with these problems, so I know exactly where they're at. All right, so the project requires an initial investment of $60,000. Cash flow at the end of each year, 15, 25, 20, 18, and 12. We're going to be using a discount rate of 10. And we're going to calculate both the net present value and the internal rate of return for this investment project. So again, initial investment, CF0, minus 60,000, and then 15,000, 25,000, 20, 18, 18, and 12. And all the frequencies are just, we're just going to leave them untouched. Okay. Now, I is our discount rate, 10%. Let's go back to our financial calculator. Go back to cash flow, second clear, and then that should clear out your IRR and your NPV, and it'll give you a clear cash flow. Okay, so we're going to start off with our initial investment of 60,000. Enter. And then we have 15,000. Enter. We're going to skip the frequency. 25,000. And then 20,000. Oops. Year 4 is 18,000. And year 5 is 12,000. Now again, I'm just going to go through it one more time. 60. I always do that. 15, 25, 20, 18, and 12. And that's how I know I've put everything in right. Now I'm going to go to NPV. I'm going to put in my 10% discount. Enter. I'm going to go down to scroll down to NPV. And all you can do here is compute. So the net present value is $9,069.11. So $9,069.11. All right, so we have a positive NPV. That's important. You can have a negative NPV. That's not something we're going to talk about here, but you can have it. We can have it. So let's go to internal rate of return. And all we do here is compute. And we get an internal rate of return of 15.98%. 15.98%. All right, so remember, the internal rate of return is the return on this initial investment based on this set of cash flows. All right, that's what internally, that's $60,000 you invested. If you receive these uneven set of cash flows, your return is 15.98%. And the project overall returns a net present value of $9,000. That means that the cash flows, all these cash flows, even with a discount rate of 10%, is greater than your initial investment of $60,000. Okay? All right, let's keep it moving because we got 5 questions we got to get through. This question's small enough we could, let's see if we can clear this work here. Second, clear. Okay, Acme Widgets is considering investing in a new product line. The initial investment requires $120,000. The projected cash flows from the investments over the next 5 years are $30,000 in year 1, 35, 40, 25, and 20. So here comes a question. Calculate the net present value using a discount rate of 8% and calculate the internal rate of return of this investment. So we're going to put our initial investment here, negative $120,000, and I'll give you guys a chance to fill that out. I won't do it again. I'm just recopying this set of cash flows here, right? My under NPV, my discount rate is 8%, and we're going to go straight to the calculator now. Okay, I've already cleared out the cash flow register. Let's put in that negative $120,000. It's an investment, so it is negative. And then let's go. Cash flow 1 is 30,000. Enter. Leave the frequency alone. 35,000. Year 3 is 40,000. Year 4 is 25,000. And year 5 is 20,000. Now let's just give it a quick loop. 120, 30, 35, 40, 25, 20. Great. Let's go to NPV, put in our 8% discount rate, scroll down to NPV, and then compute. So 1,525 and 33 cents. 1,525 and 33 cents. Yep. And then, oh no, 34 cents. That's a 6. That's a 6 at the end there. Great. Glad I caught that. Now let's go to internal rate of return. And all we're going to do is compute. So we have an internal rate of return of 8.51%. 8.51%. All right, guys, easy enough. Let's move on to the next problem. Okay, I'll give you guys a chance to read it. I'm just going to extract what I know to be the important pieces for this NPV and IRR problem. And that's the requiring $550,000 as an upfront investment. Okay, it's going to be a 5-year set of cash flows, which we have here. And you have to determine the appropriate discount rate for, I'm trying to move to these problems too fast. You have determined that the appropriate discount rate for evaluating this investment is 8.75%. So, of course, here comes the question. Calculate the net present value of this investment opportunity as well as the internal rate of return. Okay, easy enough. So let me just put in a few things here. So our initial investment is $550,000. Our discount rate is 11.75%. And let's put in our information into our financial calculator here. We're going to go to cash flow second clear. So our initial investment, $550,000. Enter. Cash flow time 1, 200,000. Enter. Cash flow time 2, 250,000. Cash flow time 3, 300,000. And time 4, 220. And the last one, 150,000. Okay, let's just go through that. 550, 200, 250, 300, 220, 150. NPV, our discount rate is 11.75. Enter. And then NPV, we're going to compute 271,272.17. 271,272 and 17 cents. Is that what it said? 271, 272 and 17 cents. Yep. Now let's go to internal rate of return. Compute 30.55%. Okay, pretty high internal rate of return there. All right. Last problem. A lot to read here. Pause it, go ahead and read it, or you just watch me extract the important pieces from it. Okay, we need to make a 2.5 million upfront investment. Okay, it's going to be a 10-year set of cash flows, which we have here. Okay, now they are using a 15.50 discount rate, and they want us to calculate the net present value and the internal rate of return. Okay, all right, so I didn't build the chart here. We're just going to go straight to our financial calculator, go to our cash flow key, and then we're going to remove that. Now, the 2.5 million is going to be negative. Oh, I went too far. 2.5 negative. Oh, what happened? I'm not in my cash flow key. Cash flow 2.5 million negative. Enter. You have to enter it. See how it changes when we hit enter. Cash flow at time 1. 500,000. Cash flow at time 2, 650,000. This is pretty much the limit of how big I make these problems because, it becomes a little unwieldy after that. After that, you really want to use something like Excel to do a much larger problem than this. 900,000, 950. Year 6 is $1 million. Okay, year 7 is 950,000. Year 8 is 900,000. Year 9 is 800,000. And finally, year 10 is 650,000. All right, let's cycle through it. Notice that it'll always cycle 2.5 million. Year 1, 500,000. Year 2, 650. Year 3, 800. Year 4, 900. Then 950. Then $1 million. Then 950. 900. 800 and 650. Okay, so we have all our cash flows in. NPV is a 15.5% discount rate. I'm going to hit enter and down and then compute our NPV. So our NPV is 1,331,668. Oops. Let's see here. Yeah. Oops. Is that right? 331 668.94. Okay, this is our NPV. Now our IRR. Let me make sure this was right. 133,166,668.94. 668. All right, now let's go to our internal rate of return. We're going to compute 27.28%. 27.28%. Always remember the internal rate of return is a percentage. All right, so that should be it for NPV and IRR. A few takeaways. The internal rate of return tells us the rate of return a stream of cash flows provides in relation to the initial investment. So the internal rate of return is the rate at which the initial investment equals the present value of all future cash flows. Okay, those were sort of the points I made in the introductory video to these problems. All right, guys, I know it's getting complicated. One is building on top of another. You know, you need to make sure that you understand the foundations before you move on. Okay, so if you're having issues, go back and try the other practice problems and then come back when you feel more confident trying these, because it only gets more and more complicated from here. All right, I'll see you guys in the next video.